All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is 3 p.m. sharp on the East Coast, so that means we will be getting started just about now. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's webinar. Today's webinar, as you can see on the screen, is How to Gain Confidence in Class. This is the first webinar of our 5-part Fall Student Success series. So we have other topics coming up in the future, which more information will be shared at the end. But today, just to give you a little heads up as to what we're going to be going over, we're going to be talking about how you can interact with teachers and instructions, how like different things you can do inside the classroom to more effectively read, listen to, absorb the actual lectures that you're going to, and complete assignments. We are joined here today by my colleague, Dr. Amy Dietzman, who will be running the entire webinar. And again, if there are any questions throughout the entirety of today's session, feel free to drop those in the question box and we'll get to them at the end of the session. But without further ado, I'll hand it off to my colleague, Dr. Amy Dietzman.
Thanks, Maxine. Hi, everybody. Welcome to How to Gain Confidence in Class. I am so excited to start this series and especially to start it with this one because today we're going to talk about gaining confidence with simple strategies you can employ in your classes. We are going to find your inspirational quote, examine strategies for building confidence in your class, whether you go in person or online, and discuss ways to project confidence. And then at the end, we are going to set your personal mission statement. So whether you are an online student or non-campus student, maybe there's a high school student or two in here, college, you're a teenager, you're a young adult, mature adult, doesn't matter. All of these strategies can help you. As always, I'll tell stories from my own experiences as a working adult college student, stories from my experiences as a college professor, and then things I've seen and learned just from being a mom. Take it all, take bits and pieces. Let's get started. Today, I'm going to be sharing inspirational quotes about confidence throughout this webinar. I'd like you to internalize the quotes I share with you and see if any of them might inspire you. If you struggle to feel confident, I'd like you to make yourself a sticky note or an inspiration board or a little note on your phone that you see every time you unlock it. Something somewhere that reminds you you are capable and you can achieve your goals. Steal one of the quotes I share today or write your own. First up, it's just a statement we all need to remember. Confidence is built on accomplishment. If you haven't achieved anything, you're less likely to say, wow, look at me, I'm so awesome. But if your achievements don't have to be huge. Confidence is built like a building, one brick at a time. Did you submit your first paper in your business class? Did you pass that quiz? Did you make it to all your classes on time this week? Did you ask a question in a class? These are all small building blocks to reach a point of confidence where you no longer question yourself, but instead you affirm yourself. When you are confident, you are more likely to do the work to achieve a positive outcome. So if you take a class, for example, that you feel pretty good about, you're more likely to work hard to achieve that A or B, because you believe you're capable of achieving it. But if you take a class that you don't feel good about and you talk yourself out of being good at it, like, I know I'm terrible at math, this class is going to be so hard for me, then you're more likely to give up when the obstacles arise. You're more likely to settle for just okay, and you're less likely to seek help. This seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? But the point is that confidence begets more confidence. So start with classes you know or feel that you could easily learn. And then build your confidence and momentum slowly. But when it's time to take that math class or whatever you don't feel real confident about, turn off that inner critic. Tell yourself that you're going to have to work a little harder in this class, not that you can't do it or you're terrible at it. Because after all, how are you really sure? Every class is different. Every instructor is different. Something that may have stumped you in the past is not necessarily going to stump you now. Framing. This is a way that people respond or react to a particular situation depending on how it's presented to them. So if you've ever heard an instructor start a class on the first day by saying something like, everyone in this room has an A, and you have 16 weeks to maintain your A. Well, even if you haven't ever heard that, you could still frame it that way for yourself in your mind if it works for you. You're not starting with a 0 and working your way up. You're starting with 100. And all you have to do is try to stay as close to that 100 as possible. If you're intimidated by large classes, either in person or online, because large classes online can still be intimidating, then take smaller classes first. The large lecture courses may be necessary, but they aren't necessary in your first or second semester. Which I just want to point out that choosing your classes is oftentimes still your decision. Even though you have an enrollment advisor and an academic advisor who may say, this is the way you should take your classes and you should take them in this order, it's okay to ask if you can do something a little bit different, if it works better for you. So take ownership of your classes and do what you think is right. And then one other thing is, everybody knows that public speaking is hard, and it is cripplingly hard for many people. But everyone should take it, and most colleges do require it. Finishing a public speaking course, one small speech at a time, will help you forever. Whether you just feel better about yourself, more prepared for your career, more confident to speak at a school board meeting or in front of a church group or in an interview with a panel of hiring managers, you will gain confidence by practicing public speaking. So don't discredit it because it's a little scary. Here's the first of our confidence building quotes today. And it's from Christopher Robin because he's so wise. Always remember that you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. When I started my master's degree, I had been out of school and the workforce for a long time. I had kids and I stayed home with them for 8 years. I knew I needed another degree if I was going to go back to work. So I started my master's and I was thinking, I'm probably not that smart. I truly worried that maybe my brain had atrophied after all the years out of school and talking to toddlers all day. I gained confidence slowly. I graduated, I started working, and then a friend said to me, you should go back and get your doctorate. And I was like, oh, that's funny. There's no way I'm smart enough for that. I can't do statistics. I certainly can't write a dissertation. But I decided that if I wanted it and if I was brave and I worked hard enough, then I could do it. And I did. Now, we talked a little bit about what classes to take, but how about actually going to class? How does that affect your confidence? A lot, so much. The more prepared you are, the more organized you feel, the more confident you will feel. So you can put this into action by getting to class early. We've all seen the movies where the student runs into the big lecture hall late and the door slams and interrupts the whole class and the student slinks into the seat while everyone stares at them. This is not a good way to build confidence. But when you arrive early, you can find the seat that's best for you. You can talk to your classmates a little bit. You can ease into it. And this is true for an online class too. If the class opens on a Sunday, but the first post isn't due until the following Sunday, don't be the student who posts their intro to the class at 11:59 on that last Sunday that it's due. Post early, respond to others, write thoughtfully, and if you think this won't improve your grade and your confidence level, well, you're wrong. Research shows that participation does affect grades. Also, take good notes. Taking notes will help you with your confidence whether or not you feel it at the time. Notes are a way to engage in class and to participate in class and to follow along with what the instructor is saying. To feel confident, you have to be engaged. You have to know what's going on in class. And while note-taking in itself is a bit of an art, you may find that different classes require different types of notes. It's the best place to start to begin the process of confidence building. And dress for success. Take this to heart for everything in your life. How we dress projects not only our own confidence, but how we view ourselves and how seriously we take what we are doing. Being the person who looks like a slob will never help you. You may have convinced yourself you don't care how you look, but you're wrong. Projecting confidence actually makes you more confident. When you are more confident, you will do better at everything in your life. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be Alex P. Keaton. I hope I'm not the only person on this call who's old enough to know who this is, but it was Michael J. Fox on a great show called Family Ties back at the beginning of his career. And Alex wore a tie everywhere, high school, college, he always wore a tie. And it was funny, but the guy was confident. To gain confidence in any class, you have to do the work. Our instinct is to get frustrated and stop when something gets hard. That just makes it harder. Read everything assigned. Take good notes, look for additional sources like videos or other websites that might speak to you better than the assigned reading. If it's really difficult and you're just not getting it, find other things. Nobody says you just only have to read what the instructor assigns. And then do every single assignment. In a hard class, you need all the practice and all the points that you can get. And submit early. Rather than letting an intimidating assignment loom over you, making you feel more and more anxious, just get it done and submit it. Check it off your list and you'll feel more confident knowing it's done. And lastly, embrace feedback. College professors are not there to tell you that you already know it all. They're there to push you to be smarter, to think more critically, to look at issues from different angles, to write better, to problem solve better. And that's all coming from the feedback that they're going to provide you. Take it and see it as a chance to grow and learn. And so let's talk just a little bit more about feedback. Instructors can have a significant influence on how you feel about your academic performance. So actively seek out feedback so you can feel better about how you're doing. Feedback from professors can provide a clear picture of your strengths, not just your weaknesses. See, we always think, oh, they're going to tear me apart, but sometimes they're going to tell you great things, and that's going to help you feel better about yourself. In addition, you can gain an understanding of areas where you need to improve. And as you grow and improve, your confidence will go up too. Get feedback early, meaning submit your first assignment as quickly as you can. And if possible, don't submit your second assignment until you've received feedback on the first one so that you can apply it and make the next assignment better. As a college professor, I've had great go-getter students who submit their first assignment and then hurry up and jump on the next one right away before receiving any feedback. And while I love it when students submit early, I also notice that those are the students who oftentimes make the same mistakes from one assignment to the next. So if your instructor hasn't given you feedback and it's time to submit another assignment, don't be afraid to ask. Ask if they plan to post grades because you want to take the feedback and apply it before you submit the next assignment. Instructors will love that and they will respect you for caring so much. Remember that you're not perfect. If you were, you wouldn't need to go to school. Don't take comments personally. We say things like, oh, my teacher hates me, or my professor thinks I'm the worst writer ever. Probably not true. Your instructor doesn't have it out for you. They're just trying to help you learn. If you do have questions about feedback, though, ask, advocate for yourself. And then don't expect perfection. I've never had a day in my life when I was perfect. Just because you were an A student in high school or in the community college doesn't mean you're going to be an A student at the university. College is hard. I have had students before who take my class for a semester of college and they tell me, I'm going to get an A+ in this class. Well, the college that I taught at doesn't do A+. We only went up to A's. And no one ever got a perfect score in my class because that would mean absolute perfection. An A in college is really great. Take it. A B in college is really great too. Sometimes a C in college is worth celebrating. Just don't expect perfection. One of my favorite quotes is this one. You wouldn't worry so much about what others think of you if you realized how seldom they do. I'm the type of person who worries way too much about what others are thinking and saying about me, and it affects my confidence for sure. So I try to remind myself of this. Another way to increase your academic confidence is to brain dump. After you attend a particularly difficult class, so this is just for difficult classes, not for everything, or maybe you listen to a really complex lecture, try this exercise. Write down everything you just learned on a piece of paper. You may think you didn't get anything, you didn't understand, but maybe you got more than you thought. This can help you to actually see and measure what you have learned. Also, committing what you know to paper can help you organize your thoughts in a way that helps you understand these complicated concepts and further increase your academic confidence. Now, this exercise is different than note-taking. Don't use your notes here. Just write down everything you learned from memory. Summarize it or bullet point it out. Now, some of you might be thinking, this is like a lot of work to do after a class, after I just took notes. Maybe this is something you do just when you finish a class, when you think, oh my God, that was so hard. I have no idea what just happened in that class. Try this and see if you actually absorbed a little bit more than you think. Another brilliant quote from Eleanor Roosevelt: no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Remember that you control how you feel. Someone may influence your feelings, but it's up to you to choose to feel inferior. Getting to know your instructor is a critical way to gain confidence in a class. Instructors can be intimidating, but a good way to begin a beneficial relationship is to ask questions, whether during class, after class, by email, or by forum. It's a good way to let your instructor know that you're engaged and you want to get it right. If raising your hand in class or virtually is hard for you, stay after class and talk to them one-on-one. Now, my son, who is 21 now, he's always had a way with instructors, high school and college, always. He talks to them like they're real people. He asks them about themselves. He finds out what they did to get where they are. He asks for advice. He builds relationships. He walks with his professors from one class to the next. He adds them on LinkedIn. He gets to know them. And trust me, it works for them. He is not forgotten. He's had many mentors over the years. He's not a number. His instructors become invested in his success, and it helps his confidence level. The power of positive thinking. Making a to-do list, crossing things off, helps you with confidence and your motivation and your momentum. Remember the first quote I showed you, that confidence is built on accomplishment, one step at a time. That's what to-do lists do. Focus on the yet. I haven't gotten there yet, but I will. I haven't finished this yet. I haven't mastered this yet. Remind yourself that you can and you will do it. This test is going to be hard, but I'm going to study. I'm going to get good rest and I'm going to do well. I am smart enough to do this. Here's an example. If you're normally shy and introverted and you decide to go to a party for a little while and you end up leaving early, you'd most likely see that as a negative. Well, it was overwhelming, so I left early. It was uncomfortable talking to all those people. Try to consider the fact that despite usually keeping to yourself, you decided to try something that you normally wouldn't for a whole hour. You went to the party. That is a success. See the silver lining in every situation, and that will help you gain more perspective and feel good about yourself in the grander scheme of things. The same is true with school. Maybe you would normally never speak in public, but for your public speaking class, you had to. You gave a speech, you got a C on it, you wanted better, but you did it. You gave the speech. Hey, you didn't pass out, you accomplished it. Failure is similar. We all fail at something. When we fail, we learn and we get stronger. Hopefully you don't fail a test or class, but remember that failure doesn't mean it's over. It just means a new beginning. My first speech that I gave my first year of college, I got the giggles in the middle of the speech and I could not pull myself together. I failed the assignment. Actually, I barely passed that whole class. By the time I was a senior in college, public speaking was my thing. And I did really well in public speaking. I learned, I took the failure, and I moved on. When you have confidence, you can have a lot of fun. And when you have fun, you can do amazing things. I love this. I try to make difficult things fun. And fun is a relative term here. Working on a group project may not be your favorite way to socialize, but can you make it fun? Studying for a test is not necessarily fun, but could you do it with friends? When I was 20 years old, I think this was, obviously a few years after that whole story I told you about giggling. I was about to start my senior year of college, actually, and I had to get my biology class out of the way. I'd been dreading it and putting it off. I don't know why, I just didn't want to take biology for some reason. And my academic advisor suggested that I go take a summer school class at my local community college. I didn't want to, I dreaded it. I had to take this class in the middle of the summer in Phoenix, Arizona, when I really wanted to lay out by the pool. Right before the first exam, my lab partner and a few others around us decided, hey, we should go meet up at the IHOP and study together. So we started this study group, and we ended up meeting at the IHOP every week for the remainder of that class. I actually looked forward to those study sessions. It was pretty fun, and I did ace that class. Amy Cuddy was a professor at Harvard Business School. She researched how our body language is tied to what we think about ourselves and what other people think about us. Essentially, her research, which I love, but it's pretty controversial, showed that if you can fake confidence, then you can actually start to believe it. So before a job interview, rather than sitting in the waiting room hunched over your phone, this will be considered a low power pose, you should go into the bathroom and strike a high power pose to gather some confidence before going into your interview. This is what like a high power pose looks like. So Amy did research on this, and the people who participated in her study were more confident just by striking this confident pose. And it shows that body language can change our minds. So you should sit in a classroom and take up a little space rather than sitting with your legs crossed or hunched over your desk and your notes. According to Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, you should fake it until you actually become it. I shared this story and this research with my husband, and he reminded me of this position he took many, many years ago. He had been doing contract work for this company, and they offered him a full-time senior position. He had what is called imposter syndrome. That's where we think we aren't good enough. We shouldn't be there. We don't deserve it. People are going to certainly catch on and question us and our legitimacy. So he started the job. He got all new clothes, dressed the part, walked in with confidence, and took the lead. He worked hard to get up to speed. I remember him reading late into the night so he could fill in the gaps of his knowledge. But eventually he grew into the position. He was the senior guy. He faked it, but then he became it. So how does this apply to you? Well, I don't know, but how does it? Let's talk about some ways. Can you fake it in a hard class until you actually start to feel confident? Can you sit up tall and take up some space in your next job interview? Can you go on camera and off mute in your next Zoom meeting and engage with your coworkers? Can you project confidence even when you don't feel it to inspire others to have confidence in you? I love this. I don't usually quote Katy Perry, but I do love her. If you're presenting yourself with confidence, you can pull off pretty much anything. This is so closely related to the fake it till you make it that I had to show it. One rule of confidence is to know when you've done your best. When it comes to studying or for a test or writing a paper, at some point you have to stop and say, I know what I know. I've done all I can. I helped my son study for the real estate exam, and his tendency was always to stay up all night the night before the test and then try to study even in the parking lot before he took the test. I told him the night before, time to stop studying. You know what you know by now. We've studied for a couple of weeks. You will do yourself a favor by getting good sleep, eating a good breakfast, taking some deep breaths, and telling yourself, I'm ready. I've done all I can to prepare for this test. I know it. Rather than messing with your confidence minutes before the test, trying to cram more in your brain, let's stop now. By the way, if you do like this advice, I do another webinar. It's going to be on test anxiety on October 27th. Okay, next is don't compare yourself to others. What is good for one student is not always good or appropriate for you. And this goes both ways. The student who's happy scraping by and passing with a D might not have the same goals you have. The student who's trying to ace this class to get into medical school, well, they may not have the same goals you have. Set your own goals that are realistic for you and don't worry about anybody else. So just a little more on goals. I'm just going to touch on it because my colleague is doing a webinar on goal setting next week. So I'm just going to mention this one. Setting goals is all about being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Today, I just want you to consider writing your own personal mission statement or SMART goal for yourself. And this can be related to one particular class or a whole semester. And I want you to write it down. An example of a SMART goal is this. In my business class this term, I will get an 80% or better on all tests and an 85% or better on all written work. Go into this goal confidently. Don't set something that isn't attainable, and then choose something inspirational to go with it. That's where all those inspirational quotes are coming from. You put these two things together somewhere where you will be constantly reminded of your goals, and we're going to call this our personal mission statement. My last inspirational quote is from Dr. Seuss. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose. You're on your own and you know what you know. You are the guy or gal who will decide where to go. With all that I talked about today and feeling confident, it's important that I remind everyone we all feel terrified sometimes. This is a student comment from one of the sessions we did at Tutor.com. And the student said, I'm not normally required to write papers for auditing or accounting in general, so I was terrified when I saw this assignment. Having someone who could read it through and see if the ideas were solid has made me much more confident. Don't forget that when you don't feel confident, you always use your resources. You can use Tutor.com. That's where I work. You can go to your library. You can talk to an academic advisor. Just use your resources. So here are the links from some of the research that I did for this presentation. And before we get to questions, I just wanted to promote the next one in the series, which is goal setting and decision making. And it is next Thursday, the 22nd. And my colleague, Evelyn Sullivan, will be leading this one. And now I am going to pass it back to Maxine to see if anybody has any questions for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. We did have a couple of questions before we get to those. There were a couple of things that I wanted to mention. Again, if anybody has any questions, whether regarding the actual presentation or maybe your own personal experience, feel free to let us know. We'll try to get to those. And then the next thing is there's also going to be a recording of this webinar. So you'll be able to go through the slides and all of that kind of information, take a look at the references that way. That will be sent out after this webinar in about a day or so. Now, when it comes to the questions that we've got coming in, there was one that kind of related to power stances in that entire slide where you were talking about kind of presenting yourself with more confidence. Have you found in your experience, or what are your thoughts on like location in the classroom and how that can affect your confidence, whether sitting in the front, in the back, things like that?
Great. That's a great question. You know, I think it depends on you and on the topic. There is research that you're going to be more engaged if you're sitting in the front, because you know that the professor can see your face and can see what you're doing, and you will tend to be more engaged sitting up a little taller, taking notes better, and that kind of thing. And that does help with confidence. So I would say sitting in the front probably would relate to feeling more confident in a class. However, there are some people who are just terrified of getting called on. And they're afraid that if they sit in the front, the professor's going to call on them. And if you're feeling that kind of fear through an entire class period, well, that's not great either. So I think, also, obviously, we know who sits in the back. We know that when people sit in the back, maybe they're not paying attention, maybe they're on their phone, maybe they can fall asleep for a few minutes and not be noticed. So really, I think if you don't feel super confident about your class, maybe try to sit in the middle and then move your way up as you get more confident and as you start to feel like you're understanding the content better, and put yourself out there and see how it feels.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that really answers that question. The next question was kind of talking about how we discussed a lot about confidence building in regards to teachers and assignments and even your own intelligence level. But what about building confidence from a peer perspective, specifically in classes with a larger emphasis on collaboration? Do you have any tips for that, or do you find that a lot of the stuff we covered today could carry over into that?
Ooh, that's a great one. We did do a whole webinar on teamwork and collaboration. And I bet I didn't do that one, but I know there was some information about it and why that's so important and how that translates into the work environment, because so many work environments now are very collaborative as well. So it's really important to do that. But I do think that working in groups is tricky, because we oftentimes end up working with people who are super dominant or people who don't do anything, and we start to, we get frustrated. And those are situations, though, that you deal with for your whole life. I mean, we work in groups at work sometimes with people and we're like, oh, difficult person. So as far as confidence building goes, I would say some of the tips that I shared are probably relevant. Things like just trying to put yourself in a different position. Or if you're always the one that says, I'll take the back seat, I'll be the note taker, or I'll let everybody else decide what they want to do, and then I'll do what's left. If you're always that person, try to push yourself to do the opposite. I mean, we don't have to be domineering. You don't have to be that type of person. You don't have to be annoying, but it is good for you to have an opportunity to be the leader of a team. And that will help you with your confidence for sure. So I would say just try different roles and see if it helps you. And also, don't always work with the same people. We always learn from each other. There's so much to be learned from working with other people, and the way that they think and the way that they see things and the way that they work. So our tendency, of course, is always to go to like, okay, that's a comfortable person. I sit next to him and he's comfortable to me, and I'm just going to work with him. But it's good sometimes to spread your wings a little bit and get out of that comfort zone. That will help your confidence in the long run.
Awesome. Yeah, that does make sense. And I kind of found the same thing in my own college experience. When I would go to different groups, it would help me get a lot more comfortable
Mm-hmm.
within the classroom. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I do want to mention that you talked about, I believe it was the teamwork and collaboration webinar that we've done in the past. If anybody is interested in that, along with basically any of the other previous webinars that we've done, if you go to the YouTube link right here, youtube.com/, YouTube or tutor.com/YouTube webinars, you'll be able to find entire playlists with all of that information. So you can always go back and see what other concepts and topics we've covered in the past and what kind of might be applicable to your situation right now. But it doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in. So again, I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Amy Dietzman, for coming today, giving us about a half hour of your time to go over these concepts. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. And I hope everybody else has a wonderful rest of the day.